My daughter wants her biological father to walk her down the aisle. She doesn't know that he sexually assaulted me in the past. Hello, everyone. My name is Molly. Sharing this feels both terrifying and necessary, maybe even a little cathartic. I'm living through a situation that feels like it's ripped straight from a tragic novel, yet here it is, unfolding in my real life. It's about my daughter Olivia's upcoming wedding, a day that should be one of the happiest in our lives, but instead, it's dredged up the darkest parts of my past. Years ago, I experienced something no woman should ever have to endure. I was raped by someone I thought I could trust, Richard, Olivia's biological father. It's a secret I've carried with me, buried deep under decades of careful reconstruction and healing. Richard was never part of our lives after that. I made sure of it. Olivia was raised by James, the man she calls Dad, the man who healed both our lives and gave us a family. Recently, Olivia, now 28, and the light of my life, hit me with a bombshell. She had reconnected with Richard without my knowledge, and now wanted him to be part of her wedding. More than just attend, she wants him to walk her down the aisle. The very thought of watching that, of seeing him take the place that James should have, has torn open old wounds I thought had long since healed. I'm standing at a crossroads now, wrestling with the decision to either reveal my agonizing secret to my daughter or let her go ahead with her plans, oblivious to the pain it causes. Either choice fractures our family, and as I write this, I'm still grappling with the decision. This is my story, one of past horrors resurfacing, of protective lies unraveling, and of trying to shield my child from a truth that might shatter her world as much as it did mine. As I grappled with the shock of Olivia's announcement, the days began to blur. Each morning, I woke with the same heavy dread, the kind that makes it hard to breathe. Olivia, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside me, continued with her wedding plans, her excitement palpable and infectious. Yet, every mention of Richard's name was like a knife, twisting deeper into my wounds. James noticed the change in me first. He's always been in tune with my moods, more than anyone else. One evening, as we sat quietly in our living room, the silence hanging heavy between us, he finally spoke. "Molly, what's wrong? You've been distant ever since Olivia mentioned her father. Talk to me," he urged, his voice soft yet firm. I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. How could I explain the terror and revulsion I felt without revealing everything? But James deserved the truth. He needed to understand the source of my pain. "It's about Richard," I began, my voice barely a whisper. "I can't stand the thought of him at the wedding, let alone walking her down the aisle. There's a lot about him that Olivia doesn't know." James waited patiently, his eyes encouraging me to continue. "It's not just that I don't like him. It's more complicated, more painful," I confessed, the words tumbling out now. "Richard hurt me, James. He hurt me in a way that I've never fully recovered from. I've kept it from Olivia all these years, wanting to protect her from that horror." James's face paled as he processed my words. "Oh, Molly, why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked, reaching out to take my hand. "We need to talk to Olivia about this. She needs to know the truth for everyone's sake." But the thought of telling Olivia terrified me. How could I tell my daughter that her biological father, the man she was slowly welcoming into her life, was also the man who had violently assaulted me? Would she believe me? Would this revelation tear her away from me? The next few days, I agonized over what to do. Ultimately, my protective instincts as a mother prevailed. I couldn't let Olivia make a decision about her wedding without knowing the full truth about Richard. Gathering all my courage, I asked Olivia to come over for a talk, just the two of us. She arrived, bubbly and full of wedding updates, but paused as she caught the serious expression on my face. "Mom, what's going on? Are you okay?" she asked, her brows knitting in concern. "Olivia, we need to talk about Richard," I started, my heart racing. "There's something about him, something about my past with him that you don't know." Her expression changed from concern to confusion. "What about him, Mom?" I took a deep breath, the moment of truth pressing down on me with overwhelming weight. "Richard did something terrible to me, long before you were born. It's not easy for me to talk about, but you need to know before you decide to have him at your wedding." Olivia's face was a mask of shock and disbelief, her eyes wide as she braced herself for what I was about to reveal. This was the moment that would change everything between us, and though every fiber of my being screamed to stop, to protect her from the ugly truth, I knew it was time. She had to know everything. The revelation hung in the air like a thick fog, oppressive and immovable. Olivia stared at me, her face a mixture of shock and confusion as she processed the gravity of my words. "You're telling me that Richard, that he—" Her voice faltered, unable to form the words, her usual vibrancy dimmed by the heavy truth. "Yes," I said softly, feeling a tremor in my voice as I affirmed her unspoken question. "It happened a long time ago, before you were born. It's why I never wanted him in our lives. It's why James has always been your dad in every way that counts." Olivia sank back into the sofa, her hands trembling slightly. "I need to process this, Mom. I need some time alone." She stood abruptly, her usual steady composure shattered, and left without another word. I watched her go, feeling a mix of relief at having told her and a deep, gnawing fear of what this might do to our relationship. In the days that followed, the house felt colder, the silence between Olivia and me like a chasm that neither of us knew how to bridge. She stayed with a friend, saying she needed space to think, and I was left to wrestle with my own turmoil, praying that I hadn't irreparably damaged my relationship with my daughter. James was a constant support, trying to bridge the gap with gentle suggestions and unwavering patience. "Give her time, Molly. She's strong, like you. She'll come around and see that you did this out of love," he reassured me one evening, as we sat in the quiet of our living room, the place where so many family discussions had unfolded. A week later, Olivia called. "Mom, can we meet? I think we should talk," she said, her voice steady but distant. We agreed to meet at the local park, a neutral place filled with memories of her childhood, where perhaps we could find some common ground. Sitting across from each other on the familiar old bench, the early spring breeze felt chilly as we navigated our way through the most difficult conversation of our lives. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about what you told me," Olivia began, her eyes not meeting mine. "It's a lot to take in. I had no idea about your past with Richard, and I'm sorry for the pain you've carried all these years." Her words offered a glimmer of hope, but the tension was far from resolved. "Thank you, Olivia. It means a lot to hear you say that," I replied, feeling the weight of years of hidden pain between us. "But I'm also hurt," Olivia continued, her voice tightening. "You never trusted me with the truth. Richard has been nothing but kind to me. He's shown remorse for his past, and he's tried to make amends. How am I supposed to reconcile the father I've gotten to know with the man you described?" I nodded, understanding her conflict. "I know it's hard. I kept it from you to protect you. I didn't want his past to taint your future. Maybe I was wrong, but as a mother, it was the only way I knew how to keep you safe." The conversation was long and fraught with mixed emotions. We left the park with a fragile understanding, the bonds of our relationship tested, but still holding. However, the decision about the wedding remained unresolved. Olivia was torn, caught between her loyalty to me and the relationship she had built with Richard. As the wedding day drew closer, the tension only escalated. Olivia was distant, and discussions about the wedding were strained and perfunctory. James tried to mediate, but his efforts were often met with frustration from both sides. The family dynamic had shifted, and I could sense a growing divide that I feared might never be bridged. In an unexpected twist, Richard called me. "Molly, I've heard you told Olivia about our past," he said, his voice heavy with a mixture of regret and resignation. "I understand if you don't want me at the wedding. I don't want to cause more pain than I already have." His words were perhaps meant to offer some comfort or closure, but they only served to remind me of the complexity of the situation. Olivia's happiness was at stake, and as her mother, I had to make yet another difficult choice: stand by my own traumatic past, or step aside to let her forge her own future, however uncertain it may be. The days leading up to Olivia's wedding felt like moving through a thick fog, each step uncertain and fraught with emotional landmines. Richard's call had left me with mixed feelings, but it hadn't simplified the complexity of our situation. His willingness to step back was a relief, yet it also laid bare the depth of the dilemma Olivia faced in reconciling her father's past with the man she knew today. As the wedding day approached, Olivia invited me over to try and resolve our lingering issues. I went to her apartment, where the atmosphere was tense but hopeful. She greeted me with a tight hug, a gesture that spoke volumes about her desire to mend our relationship despite the storm we were navigating. "Mom, we need to talk about everything," Olivia said as we sat down. She looked nervous, a visible strain on her face that mirrored my own feelings. "I've been thinking a lot about what you told me and what Richard said. I'm torn, Mom. This is the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with." I nodded, my heart aching for her. "I know, honey, and I'm so sorry to put you in this position. If I could carry this burden alone, I would. I never wanted my past to hurt you." Olivia took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation. I understand why you kept it from me, Mom. And I can't pretend I'm not angry or hurt, but I also get it. You were trying to protect me from a truth that was painful and ugly. The room was heavy with the weight of our shared pain, but there was also a thread of healing in her words. But I need to know everything, Mom. All of it. Please, tell me about what happened with Richard, from the beginning. So, I told her. I recounted the painful details I had buried for decades, the betrayal, the fear, the aftermath that reshaped my life. Olivia listened, tears streaming down her face as she grasped the full scope of my trauma for the first time. It was a cathartic release for me and a devastating revelation for her. After I finished, Olivia was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. Thank you for trusting me with your story, Mom. I wish you had told me sooner, but I understand why you didn't. We embraced, a long, tight hug that bridged the gap of our recent distance. What do you want to do about the wedding? I asked tentatively, afraid of her answer. I don't know yet, Olivia admitted. I need to think about what's right, not just for me, but for everyone involved. In the end, Olivia decided to confront Richard herself. She needed to hear his side of the story, to see if his remorse was genuine, and if there was a place for him in her life after knowing the full truth. Their meeting was private, just the two of them, a conversation that Olivia later described as one of the most difficult of her life. Richard was contrite, admitting to his past wrongs and acknowledging the hurt he had caused. He expressed a deep regret that was palpable, even just in Olivia's retelling. After a lot of soul-searching, Olivia made her decision. She asked Richard not to walk her down the aisle. It was a choice that honored both her newfound understanding of my past and her complex feelings toward Richard. He would still attend the wedding, a compromise that was difficult for me, but one I accepted for Olivia's sake. This resolution, while not perfect, was a testament to Olivia's strength and maturity. It respected the past, while cautiously embracing the possibility of a different kind of future. As for me, I felt a profound, if sorrowful, relief. We had navigated through the darkest waters, and while the scars remained, our bond as mother and daughter had endured, perhaps even grown stronger through the ordeal. The upcoming wedding would be a testament to that strength, a celebration tinged with the shades of our shared trials. The morning of Olivia's wedding dawned clear and bright, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions swirling within me. As I prepared myself to face the day, I felt a mix of relief and residual tension. Richard would be there, not as the man giving away Olivia, but as a guest. This compromise, though far from perfect, was something I had come to accept for the sake of my daughter's happiness. Arriving at the venue, the beauty of the setting, a lovely garden filled with flowers and gentle sunlight, was almost enough to ease the knots in my stomach. Olivia looked radiant, a vision of joy and nerves as she made her final preparations. When I approached her, our eyes met, and for a moment, there was only the love between a mother and her daughter, pure and unclouded by the past's shadows. Mom, I'm so glad you're here, Olivia whispered as she hugged me tightly. Her words warmed my heart, reinforcing that no matter the turmoil we had faced, our bond remained unbroken. You look beautiful, Olivia. Today is your day, and nothing else matters, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Watching her in her wedding dress, I felt a swell of pride and a pang of bittersweet joy. She was moving on to a new chapter, and despite everything, she was strong and whole. As the ceremony began, I took my seat, my eyes occasionally drifting to where Richard sat. He was a quiet presence, his demeanor subdued and respectful. The tension I had anticipated felt less acute than expected, his presence more an uncomfortable reminder than a direct threat. James, who had been a rock throughout this entire ordeal, gave Olivia away. His step was sure, his love for her evident in every gesture and glance. Watching them walk down the aisle together, I was reminded of all the years he had been the true father figure in her life, his dedication unwavering even in the face of challenges. The ceremony itself was beautiful, Olivia and her fiancé exchanging vows with sincere affection and commitment. I allowed myself to get lost in the celebration, the joyous atmosphere helping to soften the sharp edges of my anxiety. However, the reception that followed was more challenging. With family and friends mingling, the undercurrents of the past month's revelations were harder to ignore. Richard's presence became more pronounced as the evening wore on, and I found myself watching him interact with other guests, his behavior nothing but polite and reserved. Olivia, blissfully wrapped up in her new husband and the celebration, seemed to float through the evening. Her earlier turmoil had given way to the happiness of the moment, and I felt a profound relief seeing her so content. It was only later, as the party began to wind down, that the strain of the day caught up with me. I found myself outside, taking a moment to breathe in the cool evening air, the sounds of the party muted in the background. "Molly," a voice called softly. I turned to see Richard approaching. My heart tightened, but I steeled myself to remain composed. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said when he reached me, his expression earnest, "for letting me be here today. I know it wasn't easy." I nodded, the words difficult to find. "It was Olivia's decision," I managed to say. "She's her own person, and today was about her happiness." Richard nodded, his gaze lingering on me for a moment before he turned to go. "I'm truly sorry, Molly. For everything." As he walked away, I was left with a mix of emotions, none of them easy, but somehow I felt a closure of sorts. Today had not erased the past, but it had shown that even amidst pain and betrayal, there was a path forward, however imperfect. Returning inside, I watched Olivia laugh and dance, her joy a bright flame in the soft light of the reception. Today, we had all moved forward, not leaving behind our past, but learning to live with its echoes. And as difficult as the journey had been, I knew we had all grown from it, emerging stronger and more aware of the bonds that defined us. The days following Olivia's wedding were a strange mix of relief and reflection. The event had gone as well as it could have, given the circumstances, but the emotional aftermath was more complicated. The wedding had not only been a celebration, but also a kind of crossroads for many relationships, mine included. In the weeks that ensued, Olivia and I found ourselves navigating a new phase of our relationship. She was now a married woman, dealing with her own life and decisions, while I was left to reflect on the years gone by and the revelations that had so dramatically altered our lives. The conversation with Richard on the wedding night lingered in my mind, a closure that was both necessary and incomplete. Though Richard had shown remorse and a desire to make amends, the history between us could never be undone. Olivia, aware of this delicate balance, tried to maintain her relationships with both of us separately. She reached out often, ensuring I was included in her new life while carefully avoiding situations that would force me and Richard together. It was an awkward dance, dictated by unspoken rules and emotional boundaries. James and I found great comfort in each other, his support unwavering as ever. He had stood by me through the most challenging times, and now we both sought to find peace in the aftermath. Yet, even his steady presence couldn't fill the void left by the changes in my relationship with Olivia. There was an undercurrent of loss, subtle but persistent. As summer turned to fall, I began to feel an increasing need for a change of scenery, a fresh start. The town that had been my home for so many years now felt laden with too many memories, too many ghosts of the past. Every corner held a reminder of what had transpired, and the whispers of the community, though less frequent, were still a source of discomfort. One evening, I broached the subject with James. "I think it might be time for us to consider moving," I said, the words feeling both frightening and liberating. "Somewhere new, somewhere we can start afresh, without the weight of the past constantly over us." James, ever my rock, took my hands in his. "I've been thinking the same," he admitted. "Let's do it. Let's find a new place where we can just be us again, without all the baggage." The decision made, we began the process of disentangling our lives from the town. Olivia was supportive, though I could sense her sadness at the thought of greater physical distance between us. "You'll always be just a call away, Mom," she said during one of her visits, trying to inject optimism into the situation. We found a lovely house in a quiet town a few hours away, a place that promised new beginnings and the peace we so desperately sought. Packing up our home was a bittersweet ordeal, memories packed away in boxes, some too painful to revisit, others a reminder of the joy that had once filled our lives. The day we left, Olivia came to see us off. There were tears, hugs, and promises to visit often. As we drove away, I watched her standing in the driveway until she was a speck in the distance, a part of my heart torn between the excitement of a new start and the pain of leaving behind what had been my world. In our new home, James and I slowly began to rebuild. The pain and the past never fully left us, but with each passing day, they became easier to bear. We made new friends, explored new hobbies, and most importantly, we found a new rhythm to our lives, one not overshadowed by scandal or sorrow. Yet, despite the fresh start, there were nights I lay awake, haunted by the what-ifs. I wondered about Olivia, about Richard, about the myriad ways things could have unfolded differently. The decision to move had been right for us, but the journey of healing was far from over. The scars remained, a silent testament to the cost of secrets kept too long and of truths too painful to bear. My hope for reconciliation and peace continued, a quiet flame against the darkness of the past, flickering but persistent.